with our project, and it's very open about what we actually want to measure, which is, of course, can be measured through OpenStreetMap or remote sensing or other spatial data, and which is relevant for your needs. If you have specific use cases, for example, you want to press your local government or your mayor about some issues with transportation, with energy, and so on, then we could try to provide measures based on this data in our platform that we are at the moment developing. And there should be a first version of one of those indicators or a few of those indicators available in beginning of 2024. So we have already worked, of course, on some of those. So there's earlier work, but now we want to put this into a complete new infrastructure so that it can be easily accessed and compared, so that you can see how my neighborhood is evolving in comparison to a different neighborhood, so that you can download the data if you need it. So also the processed indicators, not only the OpenStreetMap raw data and so on, and trying to have some meaningful input for decision making with respect to climate action. And so this is the whole idea. We did something very similar already in the last years, or this year's actually, UN OSS for SDG hackathon you may have heard of. We've been among the shortlisted finalists, so very few didn't make it to the top, but still it showed that this has potential. The idea was to have a smart cities SDG monitor, and we incorporated spatial indicators based on different parameters, and this included, for example, how green is the area, how is the bicycle infrastructure, the accessibility to different types of amenities, the public transportation infrastructure, and so on. And this can be then put together into some composite indicator, and this is, of course, different for each use case. And we want to support as many use cases we can. And with our team, it's a long-term project, so 5 years. We have potential to do quite a bit in this area. And if you have any ideas about what should be relevant for your city, for your neighborhood, please contact us. Benny is on, and Marcel are actually there, or send us an email or whatever type of communication you want to get, so that we can work together to build the best indicators you want to achieve. You see that this 15-minute city score is, of course, isochronous, so how far can I get within a specific time? And this is being done by our own Open Route service. I mentioned it already, and there will be a short mentioning of that also with a short presentation by Marcel later. And you know, it's an open API with different types of functionalities, and with libraries for different technologies or programming languages, Python, R, a QGIS plugin, and so on. And it's easy to access, and you can use it just by signing up without costs involved. And if you need more than the API usage, then just contact us. There's also a collaborative plan, for example, for humanitarian aids or non-government or for non-commercial activities. So this is not meant to be commercial. For Africa, it's actually being used by USAID, and I think there will be also some presentation about USAID later at the conference. Maybe not about this specific one. It's a project where actually USAID is using it to distribute medicine and medical goods. Started in Zambia, but now has been extended to Kenya and Ghana, and should also be extended to other African countries where USAID is flying in humanitarian aid goods like medicine, But now then in the end, it needs to be distributed by different types of vehicles and towards pharmacies and other health facilities. And this is built upon our matrix API endpoint of Open Root Service, and it's so production for actually used. But there are of course challenges, and one of the challenges is that, okay, we have in many cases the geometry of the route network to do the calculations in principle, but you all know that the speed that you can go on the road may differ quite a bit. And so the question is, how can we get better driving speed estimates and time of arrival estimates based on different other type of data? And we had several research projects on that, and if you have any type of information that can be helpful for that, please contact us. For example, trajectories of actually transportation fleets going around the street. What we are doing right now is trying to generate better attributes about that roads based on street map level imagery from Appalary, where we classified manually 100,000 street level images, and then for all of Africa did some prediction about if it's a paved road or a non-paved road. And you can see the result already on the map. Green is paved, red is unpaved, and we hope to publish the data set very soon. Maybe this year, maybe beginning of next year. Need to still do some validation and improvements, and also maybe even go beyond Africa, doing it globally. And this is only the starting point, because of course we don't have a street level imagery for all roads, but for those roads that we don't have it, we still have satellite imagery, and we can use the classified road sections that have now already been linked to OpenStreetMap road sections as input and training data to classify further roads that are not yet available in where we don't have mapillary data. So this is ongoing work, and hopefully can present an open data set very, very soon. Going back to the indicators, for example, one earlier work was related to how good is the infrastructure for cycling. So this can, of course, also integrate a lot of different data types. We started with something very simple that can be derived from OpenStreetMap directly. So, for example, the separation from cars, the length of the infrastructure, the density of the biking parking spot, and so on. And which all influences how well a road segment or an area is good for biking. And we calculated this so far for all the urban centers in all of Europe. And again, we plan to extend this to Africa or other areas. And of course, we need to change and adapt also the attributes that are relevant there. And also, again, here, your input is welcome. Please contact us if you're interested in that topic, walkability, bikeability, and so on. Public transportation, also the mobility related infrastructure that can make more sustainable mobility. You may know about our earlier work that took this into account for real routing. So adding attributes to the route planner that provide not only the fastest route or the shortest route, but the route optimized for some specific criteria. And we started with the greenest route, because in many big urban areas, we don't have much green space, at least in some areas of the world. There are just some parks. And calculated greenness indicators from OpenStreetMap as well as from remote sensing data, combined this and put this into account. And now we did also some shadow routing, where we calculate the shadow along each road segments based on different types of information. In earlier work, we did this for Heidelberg and Dresden only, based on high resolution LiDAR data. But now we also transfer this and adapt this for OpenStreetMap data. But again, we need height data, we need vegetation data. Of course, also trees can do shadow and calculate these shadows, which is then again, of course, not only a spatial, but also a temporal thing that can be integrated into the routing. And we have some prototypes of this working, and hope that we can extend this also soon. Another very important factor for climate change is, of course, the emission of greenhouse gas, like CO2, methane, and so on. And there are several existing greenhouse gas inventories. And usually these are on the city scale, on the national scales, and so on, so a very aggregated level. And we want to disaggregate them to the neighborhood level, or even to a 100 or 250 raster grid. This will be a big part of the project, and we, as you can see, have already some ongoing work on that. We have a publication and some earlier work about the effect of land use change to emission of greenhouse gas. The use case is only here in Germany. There's a other case study in California that you can see on the map. But currently, this is being transformed again into our new infrastructure, so that we can calculate it potentially globally for your area. If we have good enough OpenStreetMap data and some satellite imagery. And so if something is being transformed from forest or whatever green space to urban areas or built-up areas, then the according greenhouse gas emissions are being calculated and put into that platform, and you can query it and so on. This will be made available also as a first version in beginning of next year, very soon. It's built on our previous work on land use. You may remember OSM land use, which was also available only for Europe. But just a reminder that there is a land use map that is mostly built on based on OpenStreetMap, and only the missing gaps in between that have not yet been filled by OpenStreetMap are being filled through machine learning based on OpenStreetMap or on remote sensing data. But the land use itself that is available in OpenStreetMap, this is the base for the majority, and this has been on a 10-meter resolution for Europe again so far. Greenhouse gas emissions have several different types of inputs and sources, and of course transportation, as I mentioned already, car transportation in particular, of course, has a big influence, and so we need to find methods how we can predict emissions from traffic. And we do this again by the routing of our OpenRoute service and street data from OpenStreetMap. And the road network, the importance of the different roads is classified according to some network analysis, but the betweenness centrality is calculated. And then we calculate, simulate car trips. So do a lot of different simulated car trips and calculate the route through them, the length of the route, and then we can calculate based on that length and the duration and what kind of car it is and so on, a traffic volume and the greenhouse gas emissions. This has also been published just recently for Berlin, because for Berlin we had validation data, but again, this should be transferable and also for other regions, and should be available also for Africa at some point. All you know, this input depends heavily on the quality and availability, and in particular the completeness of OpenStreetMap data. And this is our ongoing research on the AWESOME framework that tries to provide tools and services and a big framework with different access levels from a database of history, of the full history, to different types of dashboards, to Python or R libraries. And I think the most important one, which is now, is the AWESOME Quality API, which is also being integrated into the AWESOME dashboard, where you can do some quality calculate some quality indicators. And you may have seen the recent publications by Benny Herford about his PhD on the completeness of the building data in urban centers globally that relies heavily on this AWESOME framework and additional machine learning that will be also being integrated in our new infrastructure for the climate action. If you want to know more about that, Benny is at the State of the Map and in the parallel session right now. Last point before I close is, what do we want to use all this for? And of course, climate action and climate change is very much related to natural disasters. So there are different types of natural disasters, from heat waves, droughts, floodings, severe storms, and so on, that are increasingly, the severity and frequency is increased by climate change. And so we need to act upon these disasters, and this is what we are doing all the time already, together with partners in the humanitarian aid team of OHIGIT. And you know that we need to act before the disaster strikes in order to minimize the impact of the disasters. And for that, we have these anticipatory action projects together with Red Cross organizations, international ones. And I just have two examples we are currently working on. One is about the drought risk assessment in Somaliland, where we work with the Red Cross and try to define risk, which is not only, of course, the hazard, the exposure to the hazard itself, but also the vulnerability of the population, but also the coping capacity. So what information, what can be done against it, and this can be again put into different information, spatial information that can also be part of OpenStreetMap. And the same approach, so combining the actual flood information, in this case here, flooding in Sudan, with data about critical infrastructure, about population, about the vulnerabilities of this, and about the coping capacity, to calculate these risk scores and make this available. So this is how things come together, where we have data from OpenStreetMap, from remote sensing, street view imagery, combining them into indicators that can be used for urban planning, for climate action, or for humanitarian aid. And this is what we want to achieve, and where the whole team is working for. And thank you for you listening, and hope we can have a little discussion about that. Any questions? I'm trying to see in the chat, and I don't see open questions. Lindsay, yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, is am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was very interested in the part where you are using in your research, you're trying to check in the multidimensional hazards that are associated with, like climate and all that, and how you're trying to use OpenStreetMap data. I am particularly also interested in hazards that are related to climate change, and so I was very intrigued when I got to that. And my question is that, let's say in places like Ghana, where we have slums, areas where you have a lot of people living in wooden homes, often it's wooden homes, it's like very, very highly densely populated people living in that environment. And then there's continuous climate change, so it means rising global temperature. My question then is that these people then have to try and cope or try and find means to survive with the rising temperatures, considering how highly populated or densely populated they are within that small space that they find themselves. In this instance, how can we use, let's say, OpenStreetMap data in trying to analyze the kind of effects that the heat is having on these people? Does that mean that they have to then become sparsely populated, or does that mean they have to move to somewhere else, or now have to try and find something to do? Like, with doing this, how can you try and use OpenStreetMap data and imagine this kind of research?
Yeah, good question. Thank you very much. Of course, we can also we are from the geoinformation, and the question is what contribute, what kind of geoinformation? I can only provide information for decision makers to improve the situation, to better understand what is the potential of change and what is the current situation. And when it comes to heat, of course, the bad housing situation in slums and favelas is of course a big problem. And of course, the idea would be to have better isolation, insulation to protect from the heat. That would be one possibility, which may be difficult because of the financial situations there, but at least to make clear what portion of the houses there are in what shape and what is the situation in terms of insulation. That would be one contribution. So having better building information, not only about the geometry, and I think the geometry, this is what usually is being detected from remote sensing data and can be mapped, but really in the community about what is the building material, what is the construction type, is there a roof where people can live on even outside, but that can cast some shadows. You know that there are methods like painting the roofs white with some special reflectance color, so that the solar radiation is being reflected and is not being so much absorbed by the buildings, which also can cool the information. What is the situation about the greenness, the vegetation? Of course, in slums, we know it's so dense and poor that probably there is little, but knowing that information on an objective level, that can help. Then for heat and drought, for the people, of course, the access to water is very important. And so what is the level of the water and sanitation and infrastructure in the different areas? I mean, all this you mentioned the most problematic case, of course, and it's the hardest one where we can actually contribute. And many of these ideas come, of course, a lot from our Western perspective of how our cities are working. And we are actually the bad guys in terms of contributing the most emissions also. So we have to change the most in the beginning. But with your question about how we can help, to some degree at least, those living in slums or less developed neighborhoods in terms of housing situation, to have better measures to show where is the most vulnerable region and population living, so that we can better target our limited resources to those areas and say, here we really need to improve and have something to show to the decision makers, funding organizations, policymakers, and so on. That is, so to say, the basic idea. Did this answer a bit of your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much, Say.
Yeah. Any further questions or comments or ideas? I don't know, is this, are people also in the room? I just see 2 people online, but I don't know who else is actually listening or was listening.
I have one other question, but it's not so. So I wanted to know, when you were also making your presentation, you mentioned that we can get in touch with you. How do we kindly get in touch with you when it comes to trying to contribute or trying to reach you for any further?
Yeah, here's the email at zip@uniheidelberg.de or at zip@highgate.org. And so you're not at the State of the Map physically at the moment. 2 of our colleagues, Benjamin Herford and Marcel Reinmuth, are actually in Cameroon right now at the State of the Map. So if you want to talk to them directly, that's one possibility. Otherwise, just send us an email or go on the website, highgate.org. There should be even more further contact addresses. And yeah, they're happy to chat or be in contact afterwards.
Okay, right. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions, comments? And it's probably, is there something in the chat? I'm checking. Thank you, sir. That's for you. Okay. So I don't see any further discussion points. So I think we probably can finish this session, right? Or this presentation at least. Yeah. Okay, then bye-bye. Enjoy your time and happy to be in touch on whatever channel. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello, Ivan. Can you drop off the call and join the next section, which is done for this section?
All right, so how do we join the next section, please?